Next on NBC Palm Springs Midday, today Riverside County Schools can apply for a waiver to hold in-person classes. And a visit to our desert past and the story behind the Thunderbird and Tamarisk country clubs. Jerry.
A lot of sunshine over Southern California and the Coachella Valley. We'll see a few mountain clouds develop a little later on today. They could lead to an isolated thunderstorm in the higher elevations. And dew points will go down a little bit. They'll explain. Full forecast in 70 minutes.
Is NBC Palm Springs.
Good morning, Coachella Valley, and thank you for joining us for NBC Palm Springs Midday. I'm Joe Smith. I'm glad you're here. So, have you had enough of the humidity? Of course you have. Jerry, what are you going to do about it?
Me, I'm just the messenger. Yeah, looking outside Agua Caliente Casino Camp, plenty of sunshine out there, and that'll play a role in possibly a few mountain thunderstorms, the heating of the day, and enough moisture in the mid-levels to spark a thunderstorm with that humidity. So that might happen today, but then we dry out just a little bit as we move into midweek. But what about the weekend? We just got done with one. The next, we'll check up on that as well. But today, going to be a hot and sticky 112 by the middle of this afternoon for Palm Springs. Full forecast, and the 7-day on the way.
All right, Jerry, thank you. Now, taking a look at our top story, in-person classes could begin in the near future. Starting today, Riverside County Schools can apply for a waiver to hold in-person classes. Waivers can only be approved for grades kindergarten through 6th. Health officials say our case rate has dropped enough where we can consider elementary school waivers as well. But what will that application process be looking like? Well, we will know that very soon. Right now, though, here's Nico Payne, who spoke with Riverside County public health officials for some answers.
Many families have reported issues with online learning since school started in the past couple of weeks. Add that to decreased coronavirus numbers in the county, and we could see kids back in the classroom soon. Riverside County is allowing students back in classrooms with certain restrictions. Each application will be evaluated by top health officials, and waivers will only be available for grades kinder through 6th right now. Officials say 7th through 12th grade may be implemented later, but we'll have to hold off for now.
At some point later on, that might be something that is possible, but right now that's just not in the cards.
Riverside County is still on the state's coronavirus watch list, which means in-person learning without a waiver is still prohibited. But officials say we are headed in the right direction and could soon meet criteria to be taken off the list.
The positivity rate is just somewhere between 10 and 12, and we want to get it to 8. The numbers are down. The hospitalizations are down, the ICU cases are down, so those are all looking good.
As for how soon we will see kids back in classes, it's unclear exactly how long the application process will take. But health officials say they will do their best to process applications as quickly as possible once they're received.
I don't know if it's a matter of days or a week or so, but we'll we will process those applications once they start coming in Monday as quickly as possible. But again, Dr. Kaiser will be very thorough, and it's just not going to be a matter of the applications being reviewed quickly and as he said, this is not a rubber stamp.
And again, schools can apply for the waiver starting Monday. School districts who do not apply for the waiver will have to wait till Riverside County is off the state's watch list for 14 days. For NBC Palm Springs, I'm Nico Payne.
A Zoom outage early this morning caused trouble for schools across the country. Local schools advised students to use alternative platforms. In a statement, Desert Sands Unified School said students should check Google Classroom or Seesaw for information from their teachers. Zoom says its video chat service has been restored for most users. It's unclear what caused the problem. And on the other end of the valley, many families in the far eastern Coachella Valley are struggling with getting connected during remote learning. So CVUSD is using their fleet of school buses as internet hotspots, but some families tell us it's still not enough.
The first day was a fail. The internet is a big problem here because not a lot of families have access to good internet.
The district says 1,500 more hotspots should arrive soon for families who need them. And this morning, College of the Desert is working to resolve some technical issues with their web services. COD posted this on their Instagram page last night, saying email and web services, including remote access, are down. Staff says they will have an update as soon as possible when more information is available. Record heat and lightning storms are still hindering firefighting efforts in Northern California. It's already one of the worst fire seasons in history, and it's not even close to being finished. Here's NBC's Steve Patterson.
Overnight, exhausted firefighters back on the front lines, locked in a desperate week-long struggle to contain hundreds of colossal wildfires torching whole swaths of California. More than 14,000 firefighters working around the clock to contain some of the largest fires in state history. Officials now worried about the threat of fresh red flag warnings that could prime a new explosion of raging flames.
How worried are you about this bad weather that is now moving in?
We're extremely concerned about what's taking place in the next couple of days with more dry lightning.
More than 600 fires are burning over 1.4 million acres, a footprint bigger than the size of Rhode Island, now visible from space. In Northern California, monster flames devoured homes, forcing the evacuations of thousands. At least 5 people have died.
Oh, no.
Krista Hafner lost most of her livestock as flames swept through her parents' ranch.
I've lost so much, and if I stop to think about it too long, it overwhelms me.
Meanwhile,
in shock, just total shock.
Brian Brannigan came back to find his home burned to the ground.
It was just a wall of fire about 70 foot high above these trees. And I knew everything was gone at that point. It's just heartbreaking.
That was Steve Patterson reporting. The National Guard will deploy about a dozen 20-person crews along with air support to fires across the state. Firefighters say right now they'll welcome any and all people that can help. California firefighters have a tough job as it is, but now officials say they may be being targeted by thieves. Santa Cruz officials say someone stole a wallet from a fireground commander's truck and drained his bank account. A GoFundMe page was created to help the commander whose wallet was stolen. Police officials say it's hard to believe that someone would break into a fire truck and steal a firefighter's wallet.
It's absolutely disgusting behavior. Frankly, I can't believe that somebody would actually have the nerve to break into a firefighter's vehicle or enter their vehicle to steal something from them when they're there to protect the community. Honestly, it blows me away.
So far, no arrests have been made. Let's take a live look outside right now. This is our Agua Caliente casino cam in Palm Springs. It looks pretty nice out there. But Jerry, when's the humidity going to dry up?
Yeah, we'll see a dip by Wednesday, but it goes back up as we head toward the weekend. 104 right now, winds light, 25% relative humidity. It is sticky outside, much like it was yesterday. Doing a temp check in and around the valley. 98 at Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree 96, right at 100 at 29 Palms, Desert Hot Springs 104, 104 at Indio. 104 also at Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage 107 already. Clear skies over the valley, nothing really in satellite to pick out at this moment. Things will change a little later on today. We did have a tropical disturbance falling apart as it went up the coastline. That did bring some clouds and help usher in some mid-level moisture, and that will lead to possibly a thunderstorm later this afternoon, although the moisture levels have gone down just a little bit. 112 to 115, that's up there. Going to be hot. Add that humidity with it. Yeah, it's going to be a little sticky. Those dew points in the mid-60s this afternoon, much like they were over the weekend. And 110 by 3 o'clock, and we'll be above that number for many of us in the Coachella Valley this afternoon. Heat advisories and warnings, not for the Coachella Valley, but to our east in eastern Riverside County. And the Comfort Air 3-day forecast keeps us above 110, not only today, but tomorrow and again on Wednesday. We'll take a look at the rest of the week and check out that humidity for the rest of the week as well. Full forecast and 7-day in just minutes.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
And here are the latest COVID-19 numbers from Riverside County and the Valley. The county doesn't report numbers over the weekend, so these are from Friday. There are over 49,000 cases in Riverside County, 1,000 of those in the Coachella Valley, 927 deaths in the county, 281 of those in the Valley. Children who are at least 12 years old should wear masks just like adults. This according to the World Health Organization. Older children should wear masks when there is widespread transmission and if they can't socially distance. Masks for children between 6 and 11 are optional based on factors like transmission and access to masks. However, children ages 5 and younger should not be required, partially because they need help keeping them on. A coronavirus patient in Hong Kong is confirmed to be infected for the second time. The researchers say the strain for the second infection appears to be slightly different than the first. The findings suggest some coronavirus patients may only have short-lived immunity. Dr. Anthony Fauci previously said immunity to other known coronaviruses typically lasts 3 to 6 months. President Trump is in North Carolina for the start of the Republican National Convention. Tracy Potts reports from Washington.
This convention will come to order.
The Republican convention kicking off in Charlotte today with less than 400 delegates socially distanced, set to officially nominate Donald Trump for president. His chief of staff this morning mum on whether Mr. Trump's acceptance speech is finished.
I could, but I'm not going to.
I'm pleased to make a truly historic announcement.
President Trump with a surprise announcement on a new coronavirus treatment, foreshadowing what Republicans say will be more unexpected moments this week. Speaking tonight, Tim Scott, the Senate's only black Republican, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Donald Trump Jr., and the St. Louis couple who pulled guns on Black Lives Matter protesters. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers are questioning President Trump's Postmaster General today about making sure mail ballots arrive on time.
Don't come in with major changes that slow down the mail in the middle of a pandemic and right before a major election.
And big news from the White House. Advisor and former Trump campaign chair Kellyanne Conway says she's leaving next month, stepping away from a White House in high gear to focus on her family. Tracy Potts, NBC News, Washington.
Now, the House Committee on Oversight and Reform hearing with Postmaster Louis DeJoy is underway. The House passed a bill Saturday which funnels $25 billion into the struggling postal system. DeJoy said last week that he would suspend changes to the Postal Service until after the election. Still, committee members question policy changes that they say have caused critical delays.
We are hearing from constituents about significant delays in the delivery of mail, medicines, food, and other supplies. These delays are especially concerning and potentially life-threatening during the coronavirus crisis.
Robert Duncan, chairman of the U.S. Postal Service Board of Governors, will also testify before the committee. And up next, a major mix-up at a Michigan funeral home. A woman declared dead isn't. After a 20-year-old woman was declared dead in Michigan, a funeral home discovered she was still breathing and very much alive. The woman was found in cardiac arrest inside her home yesterday. Paramedics performed CPR for 30 minutes. The crew later determined she had no signs of life. A medical examiner even confirmed the death. But after she was dropped off at the funeral home, employees discovered she was still breathing. No word on her condition at this point. Police in Kenosha, Wisconsin shoot at a black man 7 times, leaving him injured. Protesters clashed with police in riot gear outside a public safety building. The shooting happened last night as 3 officers tried to apprehend Jacob Blake. He is in stable condition this morning after being shot in the back. The officers involved are on administrative leave, and the shooting is under investigation. And protesters in Lafayette, Louisiana clashed with police following the fatal shooting of a black man. 31-year-old Trayford Pillerin was shot and killed Friday night after officers responded to calls about a man with a knife at a convenience store. Police say officers found Pillerin with the knife and used tasers when he ran away, but they say they were ineffective. The ACLU of Louisiana has called for an independent investigation. The Gulf Coast is on edge today with 2 storms turning toward the shoreline. Marco has been downgraded to a still dangerous tropical storm, but now forecasters warn Tropical Storm Laura could become a major hurricane by the time it reaches shore. Louisiana could get hit by both storms. Jay Gray has the latest on preparations in New Orleans.
Hey there, look, we're on Bourbon Street. Normally there would be activity here. There always is. You hear music. There's an energy that's always, not only here, but across the French Quarter. That's gone right now. Preparations, they've been, frankly, patchwork, not only here in the French Quarter, but across the city. This area here, they don't seem too worried, this business. Right next door, though, you've got a restaurant that is completely boarded up. And we're going to feel the effects of Marco within the next few hours here. Laura is still looming, and officials are really trying to get the attention, especially of those who plan to ride this out. Look, this has never happened, even in an area that is used to dealing with some pretty major storms, Katrina at the top of that list. They've never dealt with a back-to-back hit like this. So officials, again, telling people stay safe and really concerned about the second strike here, Laura. It could be a very powerful hurricane when it makes landfall.
We're going to get basically a right hook from Marco and then a left hook from Laura.
It is expected to be a Category 2, a very strong Category 2. There is definitely the possibility that it could be a little bit stronger and be a Category 3.
Now, look, a big issue is that the water that comes in with Marco over the next day or so won't be able to escape before you've got the effects of Laura moving in. So you're going to have that water piling up. Flooding is going to be a serious issue, not only at the strike point, but really on both sides of this system. It's a much larger storm and could cause some very significant problems. That's the latest from here in New Orleans. I'm Jay Gray. Back to you.
And coming up next, a bit later, how religion played a major role of exclusion for one country club as we look at our desert past. And here's our Agua Caliente Casino cam in downtown Palm Springs. Jerry's got your weather forecast coming up after the break.
And a good Monday late morning. A lot of clear skies in our Agua Caliente casino camp. Plenty of sunshine. A little bit of instability in the atmosphere. Not a whole lot. But that could lead to some of the clouds building around the mountains this afternoon. Yesterday, it was hot and humid and above average with the numbers. 113 yesterday in Palm Springs. 106 is normal for this time of year. It seems like most of the month of August has been above average, and that trend will continue most of this coming week. You'll see that in 70 forecast already. Moving away close to 110 at Palm Springs. 107 at Coachella. 100 degrees. Right now at 29 Palms, 98, Yucca Valley, sunshine 94 at Cabazon. Satellite imagery reflecting the clear skies over the Coachella Valley. We did have a disturbance. It used to be a Cat 4 hurricane. Not much left of it, but you can see it kind of skirting all the way up the coastline there. That is left of Genevieve. Basically just a few waves moving their way up north, but that brought us a lot of mid-level moisture the last couple of days. Led to mountain thunderstorms. Nothing happening on radar. All quiet around our area at this point in time. But high pressure still kind of in the area. Making sure those numbers are above 110 for the Coachella Valley. Also mid-level moisture. Not a whole lot, but enough to warrant maybe a thunderstorm in the middle of the afternoon. But temps today, yeah, above 110 for the Coachella Valley, including lots of 112s, 13s, 14s, 15s for the Coachella Valley today. Compare that with tomorrow. Yeah, about the same range of temps for the valley. Now, it's in that almost range of excessive heat, but we do not have any excessive heat warnings for the Coachella Valley, but take care outside. You can see that shaded area on the eastern side of Riverside County does have that excessive heat warning that extends into Arizona. But yeah, just be careful outside, especially with all the humidity out there. Will we see some thunderstorms develop? Well, let's take a look at two computer model runs. Long range GFS says, yeah, around the Santa Rosa Mountains, possibly we could see a storm this afternoon. And the short range rapid refresh model will take you through what's left of the morning into the early afternoon hours. And yeah, it still says we could see some mountain thunderstorms develop. Again, Santa Rosa, San Jacinto, San Bernardino Mountains a little later on today. What's interesting, though, the steering currents, I just checked, are from the south pushing to the north. So if something develops around the Santa Rosa, Santa Cena Mountains, some of those sprinkles could spill over into the valley. Long shot, but that all comes to an end late in the afternoon. As far as surface moisture, yeah, it's up there, mid 60-degree dew points, but keep in mind those numbers fall just a little bit. So although it's not going to rid us of the moisture, we'll still feel a little bit of humidity, but not as bad as it has been over the weekend. Just a heads up, the air quality index moderate for us in the Coachella Valley. If you're planning a trip to the west today and tomorrow, it'll fall into that unhealthy for sensitive groups ratio for parts of the San Gorgonio Pass into the Inland Empire. Okay, tropics real quickly. We have two tropical waves in the Northeast Pacific, 1 and 2, both very disorganized, but they could merge as one as this system makes its way to the northwest and could be around Cabo by Thursday or Friday. And of course, you heard about Marco and Laura. Laura's the one to watch. Could make landfall between Texas and Louisiana by Wednesday night, Thursday morning. Here's your Comfort Air 70 forecast. Again, above 110 today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll begin to see those numbers slip a little bit over the weekend, but it's sticky outside. Those numbers come down just a little bit Wednesday.
Desert Pass is brought to you by Mike Thompson RV. Your adventure starts here.
Thunderbird Country Club from the start was a hot spot for Hollywood's biggest stars, unless those stars were Jewish. Thunderbird was a restricted club at the time, and that's why right across the street, Tamarisk Country Club was born. Here's Gino Lamont.
No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.
Groucho Marx reportedly once said, "I wouldn't belong to any club that would have me as a member." And sadly, the Thunderbird Country Club in Rancho Mirage was one of those clubs who wouldn't have Groucho or Harpo or Zeppo for that matter as a member. It's one of the Valley's darker truths. Many clubs, hotels, and restaurants were Gentiles only.
That began the process that ultimately became Tamarisk Country Club. And when they opened it, they used to sell memberships and plots of land adjacent to the fairways. And that was part of the deal.
Established in 1952, Tamarisk Country Club was only the second 18-hole private club in the Coachella Valley. Founding members included Hollywood A-listers in the 1950s, including Danny Kaye, Jack Benny, George Burns, and 4 of the 5 Marx Brothers, just to name a few of what they call the Golden 65. Representing the founding members of Tamarisk, and none of those A-listers could have joined Thunderbird in 1951.
Say, mister, is this the only way to get to Palm Springs?
Jack Benny liked to play golf. He wasn't as good a golfer as my dad was. One day he decided to see if he could join a club or something, and they went to a particular club down here which was restricted, and asked if he could join. He didn't know at the time, and they said, no, this is a restricted club. And he went back to Hillcrest Country Club. That's when my dad and a few other people said, hey, why would you want to be the only Jew among Gentiles? I mean, token?
And though Tamarisk was created for Jews who couldn't join across the street at Thunderbird, it wasn't Jewish only. Frank Sinatra, who took many different stands against racism in his own way, chose to build his second desert home at Tamarisk. And so did Frank's pals, including Sammy Davis Jr. And it wasn't long before Thunderbird members were crossing the street to attend parties thrown by Tamarisk members, which legend has were some of the best parties thrown in the desert. But party or not, Harpo Marx loved the desert year-round in various degrees of temperature and apparently various degrees of clothing.
He was the first person I ever knew that played 18 holes of golf nude.
Now, where did this take place?
In Palm Springs, when most people left during the summer. He was a sun worshiper. And so I went out with him one day on a golf court, and he'd hit a golf ball, and then he'd run over and jump in a neighbor's pool that was adjacent to the fairway, take a dip, jump back in the golf cart. We'd go to the ball. The next day, he played 18 holes of golf that way.
Absolutely nude.
Absolutely.
And even though Tamarisk Country Club was born out of discrimination of the time, Harpo's son doesn't believe Tamarisk Country Club was built out of spite or out of resentment, but rather the realities of the time.
They had spent so many years with anti-Semitism in the South, you know, going one-nighters, two-dayers, those kind of things. It just kind of rolled off their back. And yet I know that deep down, they probably had some resentment.
In Your Health Today this week, we are talking about quick and easy healthy foods that'll give you long-lasting energy. Now, through all the research I did, I repeatedly found that bananas top the list for most energizing foods. Bananas are number one because they're an excellent source of complex carbs, potassium, and vitamin B6, all of which help boost energy levels. It's also quick and easy to grab on the go. Just throw it in your bag, peel, and eat it. But if you do have time to actually sit down and eat, you might want to try the combo of oatmeal and banana slices. Oatmeal was also on the list to give you energy. It's a soluble fiber that's rich in vitamins and minerals, so it helps with the production process of energy. So this combination would be a great breakfast choice, sustained energy and released all day long, and plus, it tastes pretty delicious. Just don't add sugar. It is not needed because you have the sweet from that banana. That's what's happening in Your Health Today.
And now to some consumer news. Tesla is asking the FCC for approval to market an interactive motion sensing device that could help prevent children from being left in hot cars. Tesla wants to use millimeter wave radar technology that can differentiate between a child and an object left on the seat. It would also be more accurately, and it would also accurately determine when to engage seatbelt reminders. President Trump announces the authorization of a treatment for COVID-19 over the weekend. And as Dan Cheneman reports now, the move comes as the national death toll approaches 180,000.
President Trump announcing what he says is a major therapeutic breakthrough.
The FDA has issued an emergency use authorization, and that's such a powerful term, emergency use authorization for a treatment known as convalescent plasma.
The announcement comes after the White House suggested the Food and Drug Administration has delayed approval of a vaccine and therapeutics.
This is a powerful therapy that transfuses very, very strong antibodies from the blood of recovered patients to help treat patients battling a current infection.
Patients who recovered from COVID-19 have been donating plasma as part of ongoing studies.
I believe that this is one of the most noble things as just being human that we can do for other people.
Doctors and researchers say there is data the treatment can aid in the recovery of some patients.
There was a 35% improvement in survival, which is a significant clinical benefit.
But critics say it's too soon to determine the treatment's effectiveness.
Now, although the administration cites examples of how it seems to have helped some patients, we are still waiting on clinical trials, which we need to prove its overall effectiveness.
Months after the pandemic began, a treatment that shows promise. Dan Cheneman, NBC News.
A Glendale grandmother is grateful that her dog and a sanitation worker both happened to be in the right place at the right time. The two came to her aid when she fell and couldn't get up. Hetty Chang reports.
88-year-old Gwendola Johnson tells us her dog Sandy
That's a boy.
rarely leaves her side.
He's a good dog. He's always a good dog.
Sandy's a rescue dog, and he's now earned that title in more ways than one.
I walked out the front door and I tripped on something and fell. Didn't hurt myself, but I couldn't get up. When the man walked up the driveway, Sandy saw him and I said, "Go get him."
And so Sandy did. Johnson's Ring doorbell camera captures Sandy wagging his tail and barking at Glendale sanitation worker Kirk White, who's the other hero in this story.
The way he was barking, like, I have something to show you. Hey, come follow me this way. There's something I want you to see.
And she was on the ground right here.
Johnson's granddaughter shows us where she fell. The home is up on a steep hill, hidden from anyone's view.
Having the dog himself alert me and trying to get my attention very much helped out.
We're so thankful that he was here and that he actually followed Sandy and went over and helped her, because not many people do that anymore.
Johnson knows she now has two companions watching out for her.
I was lucky. Sandy was a good boy, and Kurt came up the driveway about the right time.
That was Hetty Chang reporting. See how smart dogs are? As we head to break, let's take a live look from our Walter Clark Highway 111 camera. Jerry has your full forecast. That's up next.
pictures can be deceiving. Looking at this shot from our Agua Caliente casino camp, looks pretty nice outside, but it's humid. Yeah, it's sticky out there. Basically, lots of sunshine for the Coachella Valley. A few mountain clouds are possible. Yesterday, it was a steamy day. With that 113 made it a little bit uncomfortable outside. We should be at 106. That's our normal high temp for Palm Springs in late August. Well, we could see that, but it's going to take about a week to get there. All right, let's take a look at what we have right now. Easily above 100 degrees in the Coachella Valley already. 110 at Thousand Palms, 98 Yucca Valley, 94 sunshine at Cabazon, Banning at 91 degrees right now. Clear skies on our satellite imagery. We did have a Category 4 hurricane a week ago. That was Genevieve. You can see it moving right up the coastline right there. It did bring a lot of moisture in the mid-levels, help funnel that in our direction over the past couple of days. It's basically gone, so the rain chances for the mountains go down, but we could see one pop up a little later on today. Nothing on radar at this moment. High pressure. That's responsible for keeping those temps above 110 again today for the Coachella Valley. Could see a few showers around San Diego County, but for us, limited to the mountains, and even that is iffy. 112 for Palm Springs today, 113,000 Palms, a hot 115 and sticky at Indio, around 110 at 29 Palms, 103 at Cabazon later today, and about the same range of temps as we move into Tuesday afternoon. There are excessive heat warnings, but not for the Coachella Valley or High Desert or San Gorgonio Pass. Eastern Riverside County, that extends into Arizona. That is where the very uncomfortable weather will be, although it's a little kind of sticky outside here. And as far as rain chances, we'll take a look at two computer models. The long-range GFS says mountain thunderstorms a possibility, although limited to the Santa Rosa and maybe the Santa Clara Mountains. And the short-range rapid refresh has a few popping up at around 1, 2 o'clock this afternoon for our mountains. And keep in mind the steering currents are from south to north. So if we see some storms form like this one at around 2, 3 o'clock, some of that rain could spill over into the Coachella Valley. I mean, a few sprinkles here and there. And then it begins to dissipate as we move into the late afternoon hours. As far as surface moisture, you can feel it outside. Definitely this morning. Dew points will be in the mid-60s today. They begin to fall off, though. The mid-level moisture drops down to around 50 degrees by Wednesday and Thursday, but still not ridding of it altogether. You'll still feel a little bit of humidity. And as far as the air quality, advisories are out basically for the Inland Empire and parts of the San Gorgonio Pass where it's unhealthy for sensitive groups. Okay, tropics, 2 tropical waves. It could merge as one. They could become Tropical Storm Hernan just around Cabo by Thursday. And of course, you heard about Marco and Laura. Laura's the one to watch. It could become a Cat 2, maybe Cat 3 storm, making landfall between Louisiana and Texas. Comfort Air 7-day forecast above 110 today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. Then the numbers begin to slip. There's that 105 Sunday.
Well, you know, during this pandemic, so many healthcare professionals have stepped up creating new ways to deal with the realities of COVID-19. Our friends at Desert Oasis Healthcare have some exciting new plans in place that they'd like to share with us. Joining us is Dr. Lindsay Valenzuela, Administrator of Population Health and Prescription Medicine. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So great to see you. Thanks for joining us. And I'm curious, what has been your biggest challenge over there once this pandemic hit? What's been the biggest challenge?
Well, there have been a few, but I would say one of the biggest challenges is really maintaining the connection that we have with our patients as well as our staff, and creating environments where people feel comfortable in continuing to do the work that we've been doing. So a lot of that has to do with education and communication, adopting new forms of communication and technology. Those were really important.
And I know one of the new technologies that you have implemented is your partnership with Remedy. And is it an actual app or what is it? Explain it to us.
Remedy is a technology that we started using about 5 years ago. It's what we call a predictive modeling tool. So it helps us to make decisions. We initially used it for diabetes and then heart failure. But when the pandemic hit, Remedy started working with the CDC to create surveys that would identify people who were at risk of having severe forms of COVID-19. So we started working with them to do surveys pre-appointment. So somebody might get a survey the day before their appointment, and it would alert us if some of their answers were concerning. So the algorithmic decision-making helps us to define if somebody really shouldn't be coming onto our campus or if they have needs that we need to help them meet. Things like safety, access to medications and food, or severe symptoms that really need to be addressed. So it was really about the safety of our staff and the safety of our members to be sure that we had that information. So Remedy's been an important tool for us to build upon throughout the pandemic.
Wow, that is amazing technology. Boy, talk about cutting edge. That is so helpful. And then in turn, so that kind of helps educate you, but how in turn are you then educating your patients?
Well, that's been really important because I'm sure, as many of you know, the information that our patients are presented with is varied from true to false, scientific to not. And we wanted to provide our members with the most relevant information we could. Much of it based on the CDC guidelines. We created scripting that was used company-wide by everybody from customer service to our physicians so that our messaging was consistent. Our members were all getting the same message. And that message has really changed over the months, depending upon what the guidelines and recommendations have been. And as you know, those have changed over the last 5 months. So we would do outreach calls to our members who might not be in special programs, as well as making sure that those special programs that deal with specific chronic diseases or needs had that scripting as well.
Wow, that is so excellent. I'm so impressed with what you're doing over there. And I know you're part of a 2-year study, too, a national study. So tell me a little bit about that.
So that's a study through a company called Altura. We've worked with them for many years on different research projects. And the goal of the study is to better understand COVID-19. Obviously, they need quite a bit of data and time to discover those trends. So it's a 2-year study, and anybody is welcome to enroll, any of our Desert Oasis healthcare members. They'll get a survey every 2 weeks that talks about COVID testing, results, health, access to food and medications and their needs. Every 2 weeks, that survey will go out, and every month, if our members in the survey have completed that survey, they'll be in a drawing for a gift card. So we really need the information to understand how this is affecting our population in many different ways.
Well, I am so impressed. You definitely have a very comprehensive program over at Desert Oasis. Thank you so much, Dr. Valenzuela, for giving us an update. We appreciate all you're doing for our community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. heard of C19 certified? You're about to hear a lot about it, thanks to the founders of this brand new program. Let's welcome Adam and Andy. Hey guys, welcome to our program.
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
This to me is a brilliant idea because, of course, the CDC hands down guidelines. Of course, we get our government guidelines from our governors and our mayors and all of our legislators. But you have come up with a great new program for employers. Tell me a little bit about C19 certified.
Sure, Sandy. Yeah, so what we've done, like you said, there's all kinds of guidance and guidelines going on talking about what companies have to do in order to reopen, and it's different on a low municipality by municipality basis. So really what we did is we came up here with this program to provide a one-size-fits-all training program to make sure that employees understand the risks that coronavirus presents and the best practices to mitigate those risks while they're returning to work.
Exactly. And we also took some of our content and behavioralized questions. And so that way employees know, the best practices to do when they do return to the workplace or if they're currently in the workplace.
Such a great idea. And how did you kind of formulate it? How did you distill it all down and decide which were the most important guidelines?
Sure. Well, how we formulated our course originally was we just wanted to find a way to get everyone back up and working as quickly as possible. And, ultimately we just looked to the CDC and the World Health Organization to figure out, what the best protocols were. And then we looked on both the state and federal level to see what we could satisfy on that end.
Yeah. And then ultimately we were able to team up with leading medical and legal professionals out of Atlanta, Georgia, to really run through what we thought was the most critical information from both a medical perspective as well as a legal risk perspective, to make sure that we really hammered home for these employers and employees what we thought the key points that everybody really needed to make sure they brought home were.
So excellent. So it's essentially an e-learning course that employers can access. And tell me how they access that and what the response has been.
Sure. So it's really easy to access. We've made everything digital because of everything that's going on with coronavirus. We wanted to mitigate human contact to contact as much as possible. And so our e-learning course is as simple as getting a link from us that's private. We give that to an employer. They distribute it to their employees, and then their employees can go on, and our course is around 40 minutes. And once they're done, the individual employee will get a certification. And if they're a brick and mortar business, we will give the business a certification that they can hang up and display as well to make their customers feel confident that they've taken the proper steps.
And is this one size fits all? It's for small companies, but also big corporations?
Yeah, so what we're offering is a standard course. That's our typical one size fits all that we think makes sure that everybody has the baseline knowledge that they need to help try to prevent a widespread exposure in their workplace. But we're also working with companies to develop company-specific courses as well, where if you're walking into a specific office in Massachusetts for this one of our particular companies, what do they want you to do before coming into their office? What is exactly their weekly screening protocol? So we do have more customized courses for companies as well as our standard one size fits all as well. We're offering both solutions.
Exactly. And we've done, everything from restaurants to pharmaceutical companies to education networks. And so, with the standard course, we use our basic course and then with the customized course, we use our basic course and then we add on, like Andy said, those company specific policies.
So they say necessity, of course, is the brainchild of invention. You're young guys. What made you decide to come up with this concept?
Yeah, sure. Well, similar to, like I said before, we just wanted to figure out a way to get everybody working again and ultimately working safely. And so what we did was kind of just put our heads together and said, what can we do? And when we realized we had the ability to run an online education program, I think we both kind of took that responsibility under our arms and just put our heads down and said, we know that we need to get this out quickly to market if it's going to be successful. And so, we spent about a month and a half developing it, and I'd say by month 3, we had a working product.
Fantastic. Well, wishing you the best of luck, Adam and Andy. Thank you so much for sharing it with our viewers. Again, C19 certified, and we'll have your website on there, a link so that everyone can access it. Thank you so much. A great idea, especially during these times.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. And stay safe. Yep.
Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to offer you a situational update on the wildfires here in the state of California and give you a sense of where we are, where we've been, and where we anticipate going over the course of the next week, in particular, this critical week as it relates to addressing and suppressing these wildfires here in the state of California. Foundationally and fundamentally, we're deploying every resource at our disposal, every resource that we have within the state, and you'll see in a moment some of the resources we pulled out of state into California to battle these historic wildfires. Put it in perspective, I say historic, I mean it with purpose and intention. Just consider last year at this stage, this date. Last year in 2019, we had 4,292 wildfires in the state of California, burned about 56,000 acres. 4,292 wildfires this time last year. Today, over 7,000 wildfires, 7,002 burning now north of 1.4 million acres. 56,000 acres to date last year, over 1.4 million acres this year. We're currently battling some 625 fires across the state. and you'll see in a moment a number of new fires that appeared overnight. We've burned 1.2 million acres since just a week or so ago. Again, 1.4 million acres to date, and that's about 200,000 acres that predated these 13,000+ lightning strikes that we have experienced. Sadly, we've lost 7 lives so far to these latest fires, and over 1,200 reported structures. And I want to just make point, that's the number of structures that have been reported in to our Office of Emergency Services. There's no question there are more structures that have been damaged by this historic wildfire season. Here's the last 24 hours. Close to 300 lightning strikes we experienced in the last 24 hours. As I noted, 10 new fires in the last 24 hours. So this challenge continues, including the weather today, particularly up in the Sierras, particularly in the eastern part of the state. We're still experiencing some weather, including lightning strikes, a little bit of wind. But the bottom line is these lightning strikes have been the most impactful and most challenging. It's also been impenetrable in terms of identifying fires related to these strikes. And I make the point to say there's been 10 new fires, but I want to make an additional point, and that is there are a lot of sleeper fires we expect to discover as our reconnaissance efforts, as our aerial efforts continue, particularly as the smoke begins to clear, as weather conditions change. We will be identifying likely additional fires throughout the state. But 289 lightning strikes. We anticipated a busy night last night. Good news is the lightning strikes weren't as bad as some had anticipated, but nonetheless close to 310 new fires reported in the state. Let me give you a sense of progress as it relates to active wildfires in this state. I think it's also important to note progress, not just focus on the big challenges that we face, but also the challenges that continue to be faced here in the state. Last week, I shared with you an update of the Lake Fire, August 19th, last Wednesday. I noted that it was 38% contained. Today, it's 62% contained. So real progress being made on the Lake Fire. The Loyalton Fire last week, 35% contained. Today, 93% contained. And I make a point of showing you progress because it's testament to the incredible firefighters that are out there on the front lines, the hand crews, and all of the individuals that are responsible for this effort of suppression, and the progress is demonstrable. The Hulser Fire, accordingly, 30% contained last week. You'll see now 80% contained. In the Ranch Fire, got a lot of attention, 19%, now over 81% contained. So it shows what's possible, and it shows what we're doing over the course of the last 5-6 days. And I want to frame the next slides in the context of what was achieved over the course of the last number of days because of the professionalism of these frontline heroes. We now have 625 fires in the state, but 17 that we constitute major fires. And within those major fires, these are complex fires. These are the lightning complex fires that you likely have been reading about. Many of you have been experiencing firsthand. The LNU up there in Lake Napa County, ZU down in the Santa Cruz area, and the SCU fire down there in the Santa Clara area. The LNU is the second largest fire so far reported in modern California history. Currently 350,000 acres in that complex, 22% contained. The CZU, 78,000 acres. What is remarkable at the CZU, and I was down there again yesterday, is this is a coastal fire, primarily along the coast near the Santa Cruz Mountains, in forests, a lot of redwoods that have simply never seen forest fires because of the weather conditions and the like. Again, a proof point that we are in a different climate and we are dealing with different climate conditions. that are precipitating in fires, likes of which we haven't seen in modern recorded history, and dense forests that are well covered and have been historically immune from significant fires along our coast, though 13% contained, not where we need to be. I just want folks to know down in the Santa Cruz area, I made this point after visiting a number of shelters down there, meeting with folks that were evacuated. We are getting more personnel on that fire, have over the course of the last 48 hours, in particular the last 24 hours, more engines, more dozers, more aerial equipment in and around that area. The SCU fire is now the third largest fire in California's history, while the LNU is 350,000 acres as of this morning. The SCU is 347,000 acres as of this morning. We are also battling fires that persist. August fire and the Carmel fire and the Sheep fire. You'll see the containment there, 11, 15, and 0%. The Sheep fire is about 26,000 active acres as we speak. Carmel, about 6,700 acres active. August fire is primarily a grass fire, larger, 178,000 acres, primarily though a grass fire, 11% contained, but one that we constitute as a major fire that we are currently battling. We secured over the weekend a presidential disaster declaration. It had to be approved by the president himself. I want to thank the president for his support of that disaster declaration. We had anticipated he would be supportive, and indeed he was supported. That declaration included some flexibility on including additional counties in the state. One of those counties that was included in the last 24 hours is Monterey County. I want to thank Congressman Panetta and others for their advocacy and their stewardship and support of that effort, now included in the major disaster declaration. This will provide resources and more flexibility, resourcefulness as it relates to battling these wildfires, as well as direct aid individuals, not just direct access to the state of California and its mutual aid system in terms of equipment, personnel, and other support. Currently, speaking of personnel, we have actively 14,000 firefighters working on these wildfires. Over 2,400 engines now have been deployed throughout the state of California. We have in-state mutual aid, which is just mesmerizing and point of deep pride. I saw it firsthand on Saturday. I saw it firsthand on Sunday as we're up there in Livermore area, and all of a sudden some Santa Monica fire engines come up. We saw some Tulare fire engines as well on Saturday. Santa Cruz, you're seeing the same thing from many Southern California, new Southern California engines coming up from almost every department in this state, providing firefighters 2,827 as of this morning, in-state mutual aid supporting these statewide efforts. 709 engines now have been deployed from the 6 major mutual aid regions in the state of California. We also have been beneficiary of out-of-state mutual aid. I updated you on some of those efforts last week. We added a number of states, including Kansas, that has been helpful with National Guard support. We call this TAG process, where we're getting helicopter, Type 1 helicopter support from Idaho, Utah, Arizona now, and Kansas. We have 91 engines that have come in from New Mexico, Texas, Oregon, Utah, Washington, as well as Arizona and Idaho. Governor Bullock, I was on the call with just 2 days ago, also sending 8 engines. They should arrive momentarily into the state of California. Some 375 total engines have been requested from many other states as well, and we're in the process of getting those assets delivered. We continue to battle historic wildfires, but we're also battling this historic pandemic, COVID-19, that has not gone away. That makes some of our wildfire efforts a little bit more challenging, but we are up to the task. We had prepared new protocols, processes, and procedures in anticipation of meeting this moment. We had highlighted and socialized a number of those strategies a number of months ago when we highlighted a supplemental appropriation to get some 858 new new CAL FIRE personnel hired, 830 that already now are out on the lines. But we had put together new sheltering protocols. We put together new protocols in terms of taking care of our first responders as well. Let me give you just a brief example of some of those efforts. We now have health screening that is done, an assessment before entry in any of our congregate shelters throughout our system. It's part and parcel of the evacuation protocols, mask requirements, social distancing. You'll see not just, you see cots and mats, but not just cots and mats any longer. You'll see tents inside of these facilities that allow us to cohort families and individuals so that they can be more appropriately socially distanced as well as physically distanced from others in these congregate facilities. Also getting as many air purifiers as we can. I want to thank our partners at CARB and others, Bay Area Air Quality Management District, that have been working overtime to get more air purifiers into these shelters. We still have work to do in that space, but progress has been made. But no longer are we just bringing people into congregate facilities. We're also bringing people into non-congregate settings. In fact, the majority of people that have been evacuated are no longer being evacuated into those congregate shelters. They're being evacuated into hotels. We now have 31 hotels, close to 1,500 people that are in those hotel rooms. This is part and parcel of what we built off of through the pandemic. We built new protocols to process these pandemic protocols into our evacuation protocols for these wildfires. In addition, though, of course, to the non-congregate shelters, we do have more traditional shelters in 7 counties, 17 specific shelters, about 731 people in those shelters, but over 2,211 evacuees as of this morning in our shelter system. Many multiples, a multiple of that, many more that have been evacuated, including into trailer parks. I visited one of those trailer parks in the Santa Cruz area yesterday, and others with family, with friends that may be in need of shelters. So we continue to build our capacity, build our protocols in terms of procuring more hotel rooms to provide as many people access in a timely way that we possibly can. Look, speaking of timely, it is, of course, always timely to remind everybody of the challenges we continue to face in terms of the pandemic itself and the case numbers related to COVID-19. I want to provide you an update. You'll see in this screen of some of the new numbers that have come in, a 7-day average that is continuing to trend downwards. 5,798 is the 7-day average of total positive cases. Yesterday, we report in the August 24th number, some 4,946 individuals. Let me highlight what that means with slides those of you check in are very familiar with. We have about a 6.5% positivity rate in the state of California over the last 14 days, 5.6% over the last 7 days. 5.6% positivity over a 7-day period, 6.5% positivity over a 14-day period. We tested a little over 111,000 people yesterday. You'll see that the 7-day average of daily tests is a little over 102,000, close to 103,000, which is slightly down. Not surprisingly, if interested, not surprisingly, the query of why we're experiencing some disruption related to the wildfires throughout the state. In fact, we have 11 of our own state labs, our Verily and OptumServe labs, that have been impacted very directly by the wildfires. But nonetheless, we're still stubbornly getting over 100,000 tests a day, 111,000 that were reported in yesterday. Hospitalizations on the report that came in yesterday showed a 20% decrease over a 14-day period, continuing to trend in a very encouraging direction, down minus 2.1% in this last 24-hour reporting period. Hospitalizations now, COVID positive hospitalized patients, that is, represent in our hospital system 6% of the healthcare capacity. ICUs We are down 19% over a 14-day period, actually dropped 3.1% in the last 24-hour period. Again, trending not dissimilar to the hospital numbers over a 14-day period, down 19% over 14 days, and total number of ICU positive patients in our system now, you recall, was 23, 22, 20, now represents 17% of the entire ICU capacity within the entire ICU, entire system. You see this slide, it's a familiar slide, number of counties on the monitoring list for 3 days. What is not as familiar is that we are seeing a decline in the total number of counties on the monitoring list, picking up a little bit on the trend we saw last week from 42 counties down to 40 counties. Today, you see there are 35 counties on our monitoring list. The counties that came off the list include Calaveras, Mono, Napa County, Orange County, and Sierra County. Sierra and Calaveras, you may recall, just recently, I think it was on August 13th and August 15th, Calaveras and Sierra came on the list. Now they're off. You can see the dynamic nature, again, of these monitoring lists. I'll go back. You still see on these 35 lists some of the larger counties in the state of California, but encouraged by San Diego, encouraged by Orange County, encouraged that San Francisco has made some progress. We've got to update some more updates will be forthcoming on these slides as we present subsequent information to you over the course of the next few days. But again, progress being made across the spectrum on hospitalizations, ICUs, positivity rate, particularly over the 7-day period, and continuing vigilance in this very difficult period where we're battling this pandemic as we're battling these wildfires all up and down the state of California. Just briefly, I want to continue to remind you how deadly this disease is. And while we reported, Monday's reporting is always lower than it actually is because the reporting delays over the weekends, never as accurate as they could be. But 18 deaths, I said this last week, I said it the prior week. Look at the averages, 128 individuals over a 14-day period on average, 128 on average losing their lives to COVID-19. Don't be misled by that 18 number that came out today. And that's why it's absolutely essential for no other reason than to protect you from air quality, but to also protect you and others from the spread of this virus. This pandemic has not gone away. It may be out of the headlines in the state of California because the wildfires have moved into that current occupation of running the daily news feeds. But wearing a mask is foundational in terms of continuing to mitigate the spread of this disease, mitigating the damage to your health as well associated with this smoke. Encourage you to physically distance as always, wash your hands, and of course minimize the extent possible. Forgive the redundancy, the mixing we're seeing around the state. Let me just conclude by making one final point, and that is I am really proud and honored just to see it firsthand the incredible work that's being done by volunteers all across the state of California, by all of those selfless individuals from the American Red Cross and elsewhere that come from all over the country with their heart on their sleeve, there to take care of evacuees, take care of strangers. I want to thank the deputy sheriffs that I have spent time with that are doing extraordinary work in communities all across the state of California, particularly Northern California with the evacuations. I want to just up front condemn in no uncertain words how disgraceful it is, how disgusting it is to learn about people that in some instances have been taking advantage of these evacuees by going in their homes, breaking in their homes, looting their properties. That's repugnant. And I'm going to just want to thank the deputy sheriffs and local law enforcement for their outstanding job to hold these individuals to account. And they'll be held to a higher account the morality and ethics, besides the legality of that, is self-evident. But I just want to thank, again, local law enforcement for all of their good work during these trying times. I want to thank all the shelter operators, including all the faith-based operators out there, representing every conceivable spectrum within our faith-based community, opening up their facilities, in many cases their homes, to strangers. I also want to thank Eloy Oakley and others, the community colleges that have been made available, the dormitories that are being made available throughout the state, the CSU system and the UC system. Again, just the heroic effort across the spectrum of people really doing incredible work at this very, very difficult and challenging time, including, by the way, taking care of a lot of pets. And any of you love pets and horses, and met a gentleman yesterday down at the county fairground in Santa Cruz that was taking care of a pig and 2 dogs, and was very pleased by how well Christian, thank you Christian for your great leadership on that shelter operation, how well you're taking care of the animals, not just taking care of people. So a lot of pieces of this puzzle. But a lot of good progress has been made on some of these stubborn, larger fires. We're making a little bit of progress on these big lightning complex fires. This is an important week. The weather, again, continues to be a little unfavorable, primarily around the Sierras in the eastern part of the state, with some potential lightning through this evening. But by and large, the weather system over the course of the next week, it's a little cooler. A lot cooler by contrast to where we were 10 days ago, a little bit cooler where we were a week ago, still hot in the state. But the winds can change on a moment's notice. But the winds will be very determinative in terms of our ability to suppress these fires, mitigate the spread of these fires. And that's why I say this week is going to be a profoundly important week in terms of our efforts. And we are going to put everything that we have to do what we can, because this weekend we've got some wind conditions that may be shifting, may be changing, that can make things a little bit more challenging, certainly make things a little bit more complex. So that's the presentation today. I wanted to be succinct and focused. We've got our teams here at the State Operations Center all throughout Northern California, including head of CAL FIRE, OES, and the General of National Guard, Baldwin, all just left the SOC after a briefing and heading down to the CZU complex. And we continue, again, to be monitoring activity all throughout the state. There are many other fires I didn't highlight, from Butte Fire. Progress has been made on the Jones Fire, other fires. But I just want to thank every single member of not only law enforcement, but these incredible firefighters that are out there on the front lines, those hand crews from the Conservation Corps, including from CDCR, that are out there, which we saw near Pleasanton on Saturday, doing an incredible job under very difficult and strenuous circumstances, or straining circumstances. So with that, happy now to take any questions. With that, happy now to take any questions.
Taryn Mento, KPBS.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for taking my question. You have many challenges going on. I don't doubt that, but I wanted to ask about the guidance for reopening. That's something a lot of people are looking for, and you said that there would be public health officers reviewing some suggestions over the weekend, and wondering when we'll see the final product.
You'll see them this week. Real progress was made over the weekend. We had some good dialogue. We're making some adjustments based upon the feedback we received on Saturday, Sunday. We had a meeting this morning on those guidelines, and we will be working with others, not only in industry, but outside our local health officers and our state health authorities to socialize these guidelines, and we look forward to having them out this week.
Adam Beam, Associated Press.
Hi, Governor. 2 of the 3 largest counties are among the 8 that are off the monitoring list, and a number of other counties are getting close. I know you've said classroom instruction, in-person classroom instruction is best for children. So if these counties stay off the list for 14 days, do you think their school districts should immediately move to classroom learning? And how soon will you allow for the reopening of the businesses you closed or restricted last month, as well as allowing inside religious services?
Yeah, so the guidelines that I was just referencing in the last question will be out later this week, and that answers the latter part of your question specifically. As it relates to the first part of your question, as you know, and remind folks that may not be as familiar, as you move off the monitoring list over a 14-day period, you're off that list. Then working with local health officers, working with labor management, working with local school districts and superintendents and local leaders in concert with parents and with advocates. We look forward to advancing the opportunity for those districts to determine on the basis of local conditions what they believe is in the best interest for their kids in moving back to in-person learning. They have that option. And that option is afforded pursuant to guidelines that we put out over the course of the last number of weeks. Yes, my personal point of view is the default should be in-person education as long as it's safe. And as long as we can guarantee the safety of not only our children, but the safety of paraprofessionals, the safety of our teachers, the safety of so many others that make the school system, this ecosystem, work. And so on that basis, the way the state has been designed for decades, where localism is a big part of the thrust of our framework, where we've decentralized our education system to 1,000 school districts. Our health guidelines have been clear. We worked in partnership with superintendents, school leaders, CDE, the California Department of Education, on those guidelines. They will make that determination of what's in their best interest.
Brody Levesque, Los Angeles Blade.
Question, and also props to law enforcement. I actually live in that area where that happened, so hats off to them. And I am one of the evacuees, actually. One of the things I was wondering, Governor, is that as you're going through these guidelines and reopenings, I've been hearing from a lot of LGBTQI people in the beauty, cosmetology, and hair salon industry, and they argue that they take a stronger measure of protocol standards than a lot of other people, and they're still not understanding why they're not allowed to fully reopen. Some of them are basically operating on the sidewalk, if you will. And the second part of the question is, and many of those are actually part of California's greater gig economy, and there's been no real redress in terms of doing something with AB5. And I've gotten a lot of questions and emails and texts sent to me after the last time you and I spoke about this back in April. Is there anything that you can do as governor to kind of work with the legislature, understanding where the session is right now, that can probably bring specific relief to the gig economy people that are so negatively impacted by AB5? So that's a two-parter.
Yeah, so on the issue of employment status, W-2 earners versus independent contractors, there is a legislative effort specifically on that is in the process. Legislative session ends in a week or so, and I anticipate that landing on my desk. So specific to your question, will there be new clarifications, new exemptions under AB5 for certain work classifications? The answer is yes, very likely, and I anticipate, again, having the opportunity to sign that bill very, very shortly. As it relates to individuals, particularly beauty, hair industry and the like, they absolutely are a big part of the conversation we've been having for weeks now, and specifically their concerns, their critiques, are part and parcel of the conversations that we have advanced with local health officers over the weekend, and they are part of the guidelines that we'll be putting out later this week. As it relates to individuals operating out on the sidewalk, as you know, we do allow for outdoor work to be done, working with local health officers. We clarified that a number of weeks ago, specific to the industry you are referencing, and to you as an individual. I'm sorry that you've been evacuated, and I imagine this puts the totality of the work you're doing as a reporter into perspective as we talk about the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people across the state who've also been directly impacted like yourself.
Dustin Gardner, San Francisco Chronicle. Dustin Gardner, SF Chronicle. Jeremy White, Politico.
Well,
Go ahead, Jeremy.
the awkward silence of live TV. Forgive us. Jeremy, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, great. I have a similar question to the previous one. Last week, Uber and Lyft were on the verge of pulling their cars off the road in California because of a court order that would have caused them to reclassify their drivers. At the time, the mayors of San Diego and San Jose pleaded for a stay that would provide an opportunity for parties to come together with state leaders to negotiate a resolution. The gig companies got that court reprieve, so they are not pulling their cars off the road. Is there any space to find some sort of political solution to this issue, or is it going to come down to the voters with Prop 22? And if so, what is your position on that?
Well, you know it well because you reported on our efforts last year where we tried to do just that, tried to bring the parties together, tried to accommodate the different perspectives. We tried with the legislature and with those companies in particular, but other companies that also participate in those conversations, and we fell short of finding an area of common ground. As a consequence, the law went into effect. We are now not a year, but we're into the latter part of the year, and the AG and pursuant to the courts, the Dynamax decision, 2 years old, we're in a position one needs to enforce it. But you're right to note there was a reprieve, and there is a ballot initiative that would look to provide different approach than AB5 specifically for these gig companies. I want to just make this crystal clear. The reason I engaged in the conversations a year ago, the reason I did was because I believe there's an opportunity to find common ground, and I'm committed to the long haul of finding common ground. So that's an answer directly to your question. I also want to just make this point, that I value the dynamism of innovation, value companies that come into markets with a disruptive mindset to create more competition and to create more choices and a better experience for customers. It's a point of deep pride that I've had the privilege of growing up in a state where we have innovation running through our veins. It's what makes California truly great. We have to embrace innovation. We have to harness innovation. We have to create the conditions where innovators can flourish. At the same time, we have to respect and protect workers. And I don't think it's an either or. I'm absolutely convinced we can do both. And my commitment is to do both. As you know well, we have had an economic recovery task force. The foundational principle of that task force is growth and inclusion. And so as we grow our economy, we must make it an inclusive economy. And so those are the tenets to which we engaged a year ago. Those are the tenets that I'm committed to advancing, a cause I'm committed to advance, not only for gig companies, but for others throughout the state of California, but mindful always that our innovative spirit is foundational in terms of our fate and future in this state, and that must be harnessed and respected. At the same time, we must respect workers, and we must respect workers' rights as well.
David Baker, Bloomberg News.
Yes, Governor. I want to ask two connected questions about essentially the coronavirus and evacuating people from the fires. First of all, I wondered if you could sort of walk us through the steps that are being taken to check to see if people that are checking into these evacuation centers have the virus, whether they're actually being fully tested or just temperature screened. And then second, I wanted to ask whether or not you're worried that these evacuations could spark yet another little wave of infections in the state.
Well, I visited most of these shelters over the last 4 days, and so we have 17 congregate shelters in our system. So I'm not as concerned as you are because of the firsthand experience of going into these shelters where I was subject to health screenings. I was subject to assessments before I was allowed to enter. Let me give you an example. Yesterday down in Santa Cruz at a community college facility that was being managed by the local Red Cross, there was a nurse there that screened me. She didn't just take my temperature, but she also asked me a series of questions. Before I could go into the actual shelter, there was another assessment that was done. There were specific protocols on physical distancing. There was a requirement that I had a mask, and there was instructions around social distancing that was provided before I even got to tour the facility. When I went inside the facility, we saw, in this case, there were not the tents that you see in some other facilities, but you saw cots that were well in excess of 10 feet apart. You saw tape protocols going into the restroom. You saw protocols as well established, the air purifiers. They look long-windedly, we're taking this very, very seriously. I was also yesterday morning down in, well, I guess it was Saturday morning in Vacaville, working to have an opportunity, rather, to see the work that was being done around food preparation. Accordingly, the food protocols have radically changed. You don't see the kind of lines that you would typically see in the past. People have individualized boxes. I saw how they were prepared. I saw the protocols and processes that were in place to prepare those boxes. World Central Kitchen, being a leader in this space, incredible work they were doing, seeing that firsthand. So I couldn't be more pleased, more proud of the work that I saw personally firsthand. I've seen it in writing. I was part of delivering those protocols to the working in partnership with local officers, making those public, rather. But I am very pleased to see them in action. Let me also make this point. I'm also humbled by the nature and the dynamism. I was on Thursday at a shelter where 1 a.m, the shelter had no one in the shelter, and they got a call that 200 plus seniors were coming in. And they did describe, respectfully, a more challenging environment where all the seniors did put on the masks, but the social distancing was a little more challenging as they were trying to get seniors out of a senior facility into this facility. So nothing's perfect. Everybody's human, trying to do their absolute best. But what I saw, I was very impressed and very gratified of the seriousness to which people were taking this effort.
John Myers, LA Times.
Go back to the issue about the counties that have come off the watch list, because, I mean, there's several million Californians who live in the counties that have been removed from that watch list now, waiting for this guidance. You talked about it a little bit more, earlier, but I want to clarify something here. You said we don't know when the rules are coming out, or if you said this week, I'd like you to clarify that. But is this are you looking to craft something that's going to be individualized to the county, or is it a uniform process? I mean, one of those maybe is why it's taking so long. There's some real frustration out there. So I'm hoping you can address what people should expect here. If there's going to be a uniform process for these counties, or it's going to go case by case or county by county that you're crafting here.
Yeah, we're doing it this week. We made tremendous progress last week. We had some very constructive, more specific and prescriptive conversations this weekend, and that will be forthcoming. None of this delays this fundamental fact. There has to be a 14-day period between the application and implementation of not only schools, but reopening any sector of the economy. So there's no delay in that respect for these counties moving forward. But we are moving forward this week. You will see the fruits of those efforts. And I want to respect the process that we're engaged in with many of those individuals that may be reaching out to you and expressing a desire to see those things come to light. I think we're very pleased by the progress we made yesterday. More progress will be made in the next couple of days. We'll be getting that out there very publicly very shortly.
Angela Hart, Kaiser Health News.
Thank you, Governor. Quick safety question. What masks should people wear to protect against wildfire smoke as well as COVID? Just because you urge people to wear masks to protect against both, so wondering what's out there for that. And then the question the more pressing question I have for you today is there's a growing push by the CTA, by CMA, by public health groups to call on you to call a special session. And I just wanted to find out where you are on that and as it relates to the state's ability to handle some of these pressing pandemic issues, as you just talked about, COVID, testing, tracing, et cetera.
I'm very pleased with the work that our testing task force is doing, very focused effort and continue to make progress in that space. And we'll be socializing some new strategies very, very shortly in that space as well. As it relates to kind of mask, that is left in the hands, I think, more appropriately of our doctor, your doctor, my doctor, the head of Health and Human Services, pediatrician, in addition just to having title doctor, who can answer that more specifically, so what's appropriate for smoke as well as COVID mitigation. And then as it relates to the special session, I've said this in the past, I hold to it again today. If we feel it's necessary, I'm not ideological about it, if it's necessary, if it actually solves a problem, then of course we're open to considering the same. But with that, let's ask Dr. Galley for his advice on what specific kind of mask he would recommend under this environment.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. We're sort of at this crossroads where we've been talking about surgical masks and N95s and face coverings and cloth face coverings, which really do a wonderful job with COVID, reducing our risk of transmission when we're out and about in communities and near others. And the evidence there is pretty strong that a cloth face covering is very useful. On the other hand, though, it doesn't help with smoke and smoke inhalation. So we're sort of at this crossroads where we have two different issues. Similarly, on the smoke inhalation side, you'll see filtered air masks, which allow you to breathe out, but not necessarily breathe the contents in, and those help in wildfires or with smoke inhalation. So what we have done, and as the governor has mentioned, I'll tell you what we've done with our shelters, the congregate shelters. We have sent surgical masks and N95s to those shelters as probably the best solution to allow us to both reduce COVID transmission on the one hand and make sure that we don't have people suffering from the smoke issues and the air quality in our communities. So it's a tough issue, but we're working to get supplies of what the state has in terms of surgical masks and N95s into communities, so we're not just left with what we had been with the cloth face coverings, given the air quality that we see now.
Thank you, Doctor. Next question.
Final question, Destin Gardner, San Francisco Chronicle.
Hi, thank you, Governor. With respect to the final week of the legislative session, lawmakers have put out a pretty ambitious outline of a stimulus plan, and in that plan, there is discussion of funding for bonds that would focus on climate projects. What is the status of your talks with the legislature on infrastructure stimulus plans? Do you have any hopes that something could be done in the last week here?
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of weeks back, about 10 days or so, we put out our guidelines, what we are committed to doing on economic recovery in the state, economic growth. We put out specific recommendations, and I also updated you and public on where the legislature and our recommendations align in areas of agreement, areas that we were working towards advancing. All I can say in the middle of this process, where we are in a dynamic phase of conversation, by the way, including on the eviction question, we're making real progress in that space, that progress is being made across the spectrum in terms of economic recovery, workforce development, and we hope over the course of the next day, 2, 3, to be making more public some of those efforts. And certainly we will have a very busy week this week in terms of accommodating everybody's needs and landing where we hope to collectively land on fundamentally addressing the economic anxiety that exists and persists in this state, particularly the need to embrace our small businesses and to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to jumpstart the recovery in the state. I was encouraged by the last jobs report. At any other moment, 140,000 jobs over a month would be a point of celebration, but we are still very sober about a 13.3% unemployment rate in this state, and we recognize the magnitude of the work that we have in front of us. And I just want to conclude on the point that this issue of jobs and economic growth is a top agenda item of this administration. And I'm very gratified in the spirit of your question of leadership of a number of individuals in our California legislature, particularly the leadership of the Assembly and the Senate, for their commitment to advancing the same. And so while it doesn't get the kind of attention a lot of other things do, it's certainly a big part of our focus and our commitment and our resolve over the course of the next 7 or so days, the end of this legislative session. With that, this is the end of this session, this update. I want to thank everybody again for your time and attention. We continue to do everything in our power to mitigate the spread of these wildfires as well as the spread of COVID-19. And I just want to thank all of you for your resilience, for your commitment to this collective cause, and let us, as we must, always just extend a expression of appreciation to the 10,000+, 14,000 now firefighters that are on the front lines battling these fires, in addition to the tens of thousands of healthcare officials doing the same to mitigate the spread of this disease. We owe them a deep debt of gratitude. Expressing that, let me express my gratitude to all of you and look forward to updating you over the course of the next few days on where we are on wildfires and this pandemic. Take care, everybody.